This is CBC Vancouver News.
He wanted to be happy.
A family wants answers after a young Squamish father struggling with mental illness took his own life after being released from treatment.
Aaron did not want to die.
I personally save thousands of dollars a year in groceries by just going online and using different apps.
Getting creative against soaring food costs. A close look at what some Canadians are doing in the grocery aisle and in their community.
We also see the quantity of children needing a mentor be the highest.
And a cry for volunteers. Some BC groups say they may have to shut down if they can't get more help. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. The family of a young Squamish man who ended his own life are demanding to know more about his final stay in hospital. Aaron Sanyo had struggled with mental illness since his teens. In June 2021, he killed himself after 5 days in North Vancouver's Hope Centre. As Belpuri explains, the family says Sanyo died because of a failure to follow policy.
On lui envoie des becs. On lui envoie des becs. Puis tu lui donnes de l'amour.
3-year-old Gabby's papa lives in her heart.
Aaron was so amazing and caring and generous, and he wanted to be happy.
30-year-old Aaron Sanyo ran his own transportation tech company in Squamish. He was a musician, an artist, a lover of the outdoors. Those who knew him say he was simply good at everything. But he also struggled with mental illness.
Aaron did not want to die.
Yet the 30-year-old took his own life. He'd been in and out of treatment, most recently under involuntary care for 5 days at Lionsgate Hospital's Hope Centre. Phone records show his father, who lives in Washington, D.C., called the centre 8 times during those days to discuss details of his son's history with mental illness.
I said, I want to talk to a professional so I can share what we know, because I think it's material. And frankly, we think that he needs to stay there for a much longer period of time.
There was no callback, despite a Vancouver coastal health policy that directs treatment providers to consider all relevant information from families and include them in patient recovery plans. In 2016, there was a coroner's inquest into the suicide of 3 patients shortly after they were discharged from Abbotsford Hospital. Family involvement, or the lack of it, was among the concerns it addressed. The jury recommended Vancouver Coastal's policy as a template for other health authorities. Vancouver Coastal cited privacy issues in refusing to talk to CBC about Aaron Sanyo.
Frankly, if the policy were acted on, I could have benefited from knowing from the professionals what I could do to be helpful. And I am sure that had they known what we knew, that they would never have released him. Had that policy been executed, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
The day Aaron was discharged, his girlfriend at the time picked him up.
When he started to drink again and I was in Montreal, I didn't really know what to do anymore to help him.
6 days later, Aaron killed himself.
I just thought about my daughter, that she didn't have any dad anymore.
A dad his family believes would still be fighting to get better if only there had been communication. Belpuri, CBC News, Vancouver.
BC has passed a grim COVID milestone, even as hospitalizations drop. The BC Centre for Disease Control says more than 5,000 people in our province are now believed to have died of causes linked to the virus since the pandemic began. Officials report 560 confirmed new cases as of last Saturday. That's down from 661 the week before. Just under 270 people are now in hospital with the virus. That's also down from the week before. The province also says flu cases are down sharply this week after a peak in November. We are set to learn more tomorrow morning about the deadly shooting at a bank on Vancouver Island last June. 2 armed robbers were killed by police during a shootout at a BMO in Saanich. 6 officers were wounded in that daytime gunfire. The Independent Investigations Office cleared police of criminal wrongdoing in the death of 22-year-old brothers Matthew and Isaac Ochterlony. CBC News will have live coverage of the news conference at 11:30 tomorrow morning. More than 7 years after he was killed during an encounter with Vancouver police, a coroner's inquest will be held into the death of Miles Gray. The 33-year-old Seashelt man died in a backyard in Burnaby in August 2015 after he confronted a homeowner for watering her lawn during a drought. A Crown report found officers restrained Gray's arms and legs, kicked and punched him, pepper sprayed him, and hit him with a baton. In 2020, the Crown announced none of the officers involved would be charged, in part because of a lack of witnesses and uncertainty around his cause of death. But the Office of the Police Complaint Commissioner did restart its own probe. The inquest is set for mid-April. Meanwhile, Vancouver Police Chief Adam Palmer has had his contract extended until 2025. The announcement was made at today's police board meeting. Afterwards, CBC News asked Palmer about the controversial thin blue line patch worn by some VPD officers. It's there. Some argue it has ties to colonial oppression.
Well, anytime somebody down in the United States does something and co-ops a symbol of policing, that is, of course, of concern, because that's not the meaning of it, and that's not what it means to our officers. And our officers have no ill intent whatsoever when they're wearing that patch. There's no racist overtones or anything like that. It's service and sacrifice.
Palmer says he has sent an email reminding officers of VPD policy, which states they cannot wear anything that is not part of their standard issue uniform. Richmond RCMP have dismantled what they call a very sophisticated ID forgery lab.
It's pretty elaborate. You're going to have some level of sophistication and to be able to do this. Not everybody can just start manufacturing stolen identity.
The investigation started last November after U.S. Homeland Security intercepted identity theft materials that were heading to a home in Richmond. The RCMP says officers found thousands of dollars worth of equipment that produced fraudulent driver's licenses, credit cards, and permanent resident cards. The man arrested could face numerous charges of identity theft, forgery, and fraud. A major BC city is staying silent over serious allegations around how it handled confidential information about a $1 billion wastewater project. An ongoing lawsuit is part of the reason for the lack of comment. But as Justin McElroy reports, it also has to do with how politics are done in Coquitlam.
This is Coquitlam Mayor Richard Stewart.
And so I'm here to make a plug for getting rid of the plugs and flushing only the stuff that's meant to be flushed.
That was in 2019 when Stewart was the chair of Metro Vancouver's Liquid Waste Committee. And it's what his city manager did while he was in charge of that committee that has Coquitlam in, well,
poo. Unfortunately, it's in the middle of a legal matter, and I am somewhat unable to comment.
So what is Stewart talking about? And what is legal matter that could cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars throughout the region? It all has to do with the wastewater plant, which deals with the things dancing behind Stewart. Metro Vancouver hired Acciona to build one in North Vancouver.
This new plant will become part of Metro Vancouver's network of wastewater treatment plants built to protect public health and the environment.
But it was going over budget, and it wasn't meeting target deadlines. So the Metro board had a meeting, went over the evidence, and decided to fire them. Richard Stewart had that evidence via a secure username and password. He gave the city manager, Peter Steplin, that username and password. Now, it's not uncommon for mayors to share confidential information about regional issues with their top staffer, except Steplin's daughter worked for Acciona. Steplin had the confidential information open on his computer, and it's alleged that his daughter took pictures of the information and shared it within the company before they were officially told about the firing. Now, this information became public a month ago, and it resulted in headlines everywhere. But the response from Coquitlam?
I'm frustrated as well, because I would love to be able to describe this more fully, because it's not as it's being portrayed.
According to court filings, Steplin told Coquitlam the leak happened when he left the room. And a month before the lawsuit became public, he decided to retire. But that's really all we know at this point. The city's handling of confidential information is implicated in dueling lawsuits worth $750 million, and the only public response has been the quiet retirement of the person at the center. The senior MLA for Coquitlam is asking why, but the answer may lie in its political culture. Coquitlam doesn't have a party system. Their councillors rarely disagree. It means consistent governance, but also where public conflict isn't part of the DNA.
You don't tend to get people spouting off or, blowing their top. I would think if you were in a place where things were more divisive, certainly there would probably be a lot more going on.
In other words, Coquitlam is boring. which often in politics can be a good thing. But if a city needs greater scrutiny, sometimes the place can be too boring for its own good.
Justin McElroy reporting. The province is pledging more help for BC's beleaguered forestry and logging sectors. $50 million announced today for the Forest Enhancement Society of BC. The money is part of the 2023 budget and is meant primarily to fund the collection of fire-damaged wood and give it to pulp mills that need the material. It will also focus on keeping pulp mills in rural communities afloat amid a product shortage. It comes after Canfor announced it's closing its pulp line at a mill in Prince George, putting 300 people out of work. It's a cry for help for your time. A shortage of volunteers is hitting groups across BC just as they see a rise in demand. Yasmin Gandam has more on how some organizations are being forced to scale back.
Since the age of 5, Girl Guides has played a big role in Diamond Isinger's life.
What I want to see now, today, is this next generation, this current generation of girls, have access to the same opportunities that I and thousands of British Columbian women have had access to.
But the opportunity is dwindling because of a lack of volunteers. Across the province, the wait list to join Girl Guides is at 1,200, forcing the organization to rethink its model.
What we're looking to do is make sure that our organization can be agile in keeping up with the expectations of today's volunteer.
The Big Brothers program in Surrey is struggling too. It needs at least 38 more volunteers to meet demand. It's had to stop accepting any children from the area.
Surrey is such a big city in Vancouver. There's a lot of families that live there, but we also see the quantity of children needing a mentor be the highest.
Current volunteers worry the shortage could have troubling impacts on the future of Big Brothers.
The youth that participate in the program, there's also a very high likelihood that they will join as volunteers in the future. With a slowdown in matches, with a slowdown of new people joining the program, it can ultimately affect how many families can receive this support in the future.
Many groups say the volunteers simply did not return after the pandemic, and the shortage is being seen across the province, particularly affecting youth and seniors.
Basically, the most marginalized people, the ones that could benefit the most from a volunteer, the volunteers are not there. And so that's really going to affect organizations and how they think about, we might need to get more staffing, we might need to pay somebody.
For now, it's a desperate plea to the public to help keep organizations alive. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
Holiday airline Air Transat is shutting down its operations here in Vancouver. By July, it will close its office at YVR. The move will result in 200 flight attendant positions being cut. The company says those jobs will be transferred to Toronto and Montreal, and staff can relocate if they want to stay with the company. The Canadian Union of Public Employees, which represents the vast majority of Canadian flight attendants, plans to negotiate with Air Transat so affected members receive adequate severance pay or moving allowances. Still with travel, if you drive and asked for a jazzy vanity license plate in BC, ICBC is sharing its list of rejected plate names. Every year, the Insurance Corporation gets about 10,000 requests for personalized plates. More than 300 were turned away because they were deemed offensive, suggestive, or political. Piggy, piracy, and narcos were denied because they were deemed to be promoting bullying or crime. Copyrighted names are not allowed. So Sprite, Honda were also turned down. And that last one, Too Fast for You, supports speeding, says ICBC. You can see the full list of banned plates, and there's some doozies on their website.
School snacks, things like that, I noticed never go on sale anymore.
With grocery costs up 10% across the country, how one BC woman is trimming her family's food bill. Some tips after this. Hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream. Thanks for being here. As millions of people across the world mark the Lunar New Year and welcome the Year of the Rabbit, the Vietnamese community will be celebrating a different animal, the cat. Here in our province, some are trying to share the message that the upcoming year is more than just about one creature.
Hi, my name is James Lay. It's the Year of the Cat in my culture, the Vietnamese culture, and what we say for the Lunar New Year is Chúc mừng năm mới, which means Happy New Year. Most people know this year is the year of the rabbit, but for me, I was born in the year that I feel is the year of the cat, and I relate to cats. Another 12-year cycle has happened, and this is my year to be more lucky. My mother would say that this is our lucky year, and I say our because this was also the year of the cat was also the year in which my parents were born. So this figurine, my mother gave it to my partner and me last year, and so my mother, I guess, knowing that this year would be the year of the rabbit and there'd be a lot of rabbit-themed things in the stores, figured that we could probably use a cat because that's what Vietnamese Canadians would celebrate, it being the year of the cat versus the rabbit. When I was a kid, we would celebrate by gathering as a family, wishing my parents Happy New Year, and then my parents would give me and my 3 sisters Lisi, or the Lucky Red envelopes, and inside would be money. We would also just eat some traditional Vietnamese foods. I just remember having lots of sticky rice, which was really good. And then sometimes we would wear the traditional áo dài, which is the traditional Vietnamese dress. And I remember my sisters and me, we would sometimes, on some years, wear that. Over the years, you see that the stamps would show a rabbit at the bank or at the grocery store. They would have ads that are saying Happy Lunar New Year. They would also say Happy New Year in Chinese characters. But then there'd be a golden rabbit or a rabbit on like a medallion of some sort. And I'm really happy that people are recognizing Lunar New Year, but it just makes me feel like as a community, us Vietnamese Canadians, we're a little bit forgotten, that we do celebrate it just like our Chinese Canadian and our Korean Canadian friends. We're also different. I just feel like I'm not seen, and all I'm asking is that I be seen as a person and as part of my community.
If you've been grocery shopping recently, you know the squeeze. Grocery prices have soared over the last year in BC. The CBC's Joel Ballard has an in-depth look at some of the ways people are getting creative to cut costs.
If you've been to the grocery store lately, then you know. The cost of food just keeps climbing and climbing, with the typical bill for a family of 4 expected to jump by more than $1,000 in 2023. So, I wanted to know how people here in BC are coping, and what creative ways they've found to deal with the high prices.
I personally save thousands of dollars a year in groceries by just going online and using different apps.
First 3 rows last year were high trellises of Romano beans, which looked really beautiful and were super productive.
And I also wanted to understand what these rising costs mean for their lives in the long term, and how we might fix this for good. I'm in Surrey outside of a grocery store where we're about to meet this no-nonsense grandma named Erin Schultz. Now in her house, she has 6 mouths that she has to feed. She has her daughter, her 4 grandchildren, and she's come up with a genius way to save hundreds of dollars when she goes grocery shopping. And so how have you noticed that the rising cost of food over the last year has impacted your family?
Basically everything for kids, especially school snacks, things like that, I notice never go on sale anymore. It's items that used to be $1.99, 2 for $5 are now, $3, $3.50, $4 each. Cost of produce is absolutely outrageous. And I think that the more processed foods is almost a cheaper way to go.
Have you had to change how you shop, the way you shop, what you shop for?
Well, I don't ever pay full price for anything, ever, no matter how badly we want it. And I just basically took to the internet and started researching ways of saving money.
Erin uses an app that collects all the flyers from local stores. She finds the cheapest price for products, then goes shopping at a store that offers price matching.
I personally save thousands of dollars a year in groceries by just going online and using different apps.
Should we shop?
Let's shop.
Okay. Okay, so we bought the exact same 8 items. Mine at regular price cost $36.48 total. What was your total?
$22.85 on 8 items.
And 8 items, I can imagine for a house of 6 people.
This is
not a normal shop.
No.
What do you think about the fact that we're now in this place, in this country, where you have to figure something like this out, where you have to find an app that can help you save hundreds on your groceries because the price of food is so high?
It's terrifying. It's terrifying. I mean, you think of this kids in school. What are they eating? What are your parents having to get a second job to be able to put fresh produce? I mean, a head of lettuce is over $6 right now. A simple head of lettuce is $6. It's ridiculous.
As food insecurity grows across Canada, it's forcing people to adapt not just on a personal level, but also a community level. Hey, I'm Joel.
We grow food in the community, by the community, and for the community.
When COVID happened, a lot of our programs shut down, and then we began to think, well, okay, we need to pivot and begin to think about what services we're providing. And so out of that came the Yard Garden Harvest Project.
The program's still in its infancy, but here's how it works. Last season, 5 different neighbors volunteered their lawns, and more than 1,200 pounds of fresh produce was grown. Now, this lawn might not look like much right now, but at the height of the growing season, it produces food like broccoli, cherry tomatoes, gailan, garlic, all this produce that is then used for food security programs. When I think about it, I think there are so many yards in Vancouver, there are so many yards in Metro Vancouver. This is a model that different communities can be replicating.
I think this should definitely be something expanded to as many neighborhoods and cities as possible, because one of the really neat impacts is how it changes space and changes people's perspective on what a yard can be. It doesn't have to just be grass or, shrubs. It can produce food, and I think that's a really neat part of the project.
And tomorrow, Joel will take a look at the tough decisions some people are having to make because of food insecurity and how to address the underlying issue. Live look at Harbour Centre. More sun coming to the south coast, and so is a bit of chill. Johanna's BC-wide forecast is next.
This may seem a strange place for hockey fans to rally.
One of our brothers need our help, so we're here to try to inspire him more.
Outside the hospital, former Canuck Gino Ojek is being treated for a heart condition he says is terminal. Doctors say he has months, possibly weeks, to live.
And such a warm-hearted guy, and even though he was known for being such a tough guy, he was still just a very cool guy.
Ojek was known as a fighter and enforcer on the ice. Last week, the 43-year-old wrote a candid letter about his illness and said, "Your Gino cheers were my favorite. I wish I could hear them again." And today, he did. Gino! 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 Then Ojek surprised the crowd by coming down from his room.
See, I'm even getting kisses from men now. Yeah, so I wanted to say thank you. I can't stay too long because I gotta get some medication and stuff, but I really appreciate you guys coming out.
Appreciate you, Gino. Big time.
Thank you.
Ojik grew up on a reserve in Quebec and became a role model for First Nations youth.
Even though he's an NHL star, he's just really friendly and real awesome guy to be known.
Family members were touched by today's outpouring.
Well, he's staying very strong. He's been a fighter all his life. And, you know, this is going to be his toughest battle, but, you know, he's ready for the worst.
Fans are planning another rally next month. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Celebrate the city's most impactful leaders with Anita Bath at the annual Vancouver Magazine Power 50 Awards. Join the fun February 2nd at the Terminal City Club. Learn more and get tickets at vanmag.com. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Time for our BC-wide weather forecast with meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. Joe, early this morning after I got home from work, saw fog and mist roll in. Woke up, it was there again with the sun.
Now I know exactly what time you got home.
Don't check the log.
I won't. But yes, the fog rolled in overnight last night, I'll say, and stuck around this morning. That was thanks to that sinking air mass around that high pressure that also brought us half a day of sunshine, and it was lovely indeed. It's sitting just south of British Columbia, but we're sort of under it across the southern half of the province. That clockwise flow is directing the Pacific systems right into Haida Gwaii. You're getting the big winds and the rain tonight into tomorrow morning. We may see a few stray showers overnight tonight and into Friday. We're getting a few systems sneak in. Better chance towards the North Shore where things sort of hang on in the mountains, but generally clearing as we head in through the afternoon. In fact, there we go, Friday afternoon, back into the sun. So if you wake up and see a few showers and low cloud, that should clear as we head into the afternoon. Just want to pause you, Saturday, 5 a.m. That's the next system to quickly bring us the rain for Saturday morning and some good mountain snow. I think snow levels will be around 900 meters. We do still need the snow. And the rain is a quick shot. I think most of it will happen during the first half of the day, and Saturday, 3-4 p.m., we could see some good clearing before a good-looking Sunday. Temperatures are coming down over the next couple of days under this high-pressure ridge. Here are the afternoon highs as we head into Saturday and Sunday, so sort of hovering around the below freezing mark by a couple of degrees in the interior. And we'll see that in Metro Vancouver through our overnight lows. So overnight and tomorrow morning showers, but I've kept things mainly dry. Saturday morning rain, hoping for some clearing. Beautiful day on Sunday. And I had to make sure, did I spell beautiful right? Yes. Flurries on Monday, and then look at those temperatures. Crisp, but nice to see a few more sunny icons.
And now that you've said a beautiful day, It's on the record. So
I've
if it doesn't
locked
happen,
that in stone. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we know who to check for the receipt.
I'm here.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
That's your late news for Thursday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news anytime, check the website cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock. Have a good night.